Hello, welcome to Dracula in Russian Lesson 31. If you have not listened to Lesson 30, please click on it now. If you are new to the channel, please click on Lesson 1.
Lord Godalming and I were silent, but Dr. Van Helsing added, "This is a reminder. Remember must translates to Dolgen. Friend John used nide bolia of lunatics than I do, and I'm glad of it, for I fear that if it had been to me to decide I would do that last hysterical outburst have given him free. But we live and learn, and in nash present task we Dolgen take no chance, as my Drug Quincy would say. All is best as they are." Dr. Seward seemed to answer them both in a dreamy kind of way. "This is a reminder. Remember up translates to virch. This is a reminder. Remember out translates to is. This is a reminder. Remember what translates to sto. I don't znait but that I agree with you. If that Mushima had been an ordinary lunatic, I would have taken my chance of trusting him. But he seems so mixed virch with the Count in an indexy kind of sposob that I'm afraid of doing anything wrong by helping his fads. I can't forget, Cuck he prayed with almost equal fervor for a cat, and then tried to tear my throat ease with his teeth. Besides, he called the Count Lord and Master, and he may want to get ease to help him in some diabolical sposob. That horrid thing has the wolves and the rats and his own kind to help him, so I suppose he isn't above trying to use a respectable lunatic. He certainly did seem earnest, though. I tolka hope we have done sto is best. These things, in conjunction with the wild work we have in hand, help to unnerve a man." The professor stepped over and, laying his hand on his shoulder, said in his grave, kindly way, "This is a reminder. Remember what translates to sto. This is a reminder. Remember up translates to virch. Friend John, have no fear. We are trying to do nash duty in a очень sad and terrible case. We может только do as we deem best. Что else have we to hope for except the pity of the хороший God?" Lord Godalming had slipped away for a few minutes, but сейчас he returned. He held virch a malinki silver whistle, as he remarked, "This is a reminder. Remember out translates to ease. That starry place may be full of rats, and if so, I've got an antidote on call." Having passed the wall, we vzal nash sposob to the house, taking care to keep in the shadows of the trees on the lawn when the moonlight shone ease. When we got to the porch, the professor opened his bag and vzal a lot of things which he laid on the step, sorting them 4 malinki groups, evidently one for each. Then he spoke, "This is a reminder. Remember must translates to Dolgen. This is a reminder. Remember out translates to ease. My friends, we are going v a terrible danger, and we need arms of many kinds. Nash enemy is not merely spiritual. Remember that he has the strength of 20 men, and that, though nash necks or nash windpipes are of the common kind, and therefore breakable or crushable, his are not amenable to mere strength. A stronger Mushima, or a body of men bolia strong in all than him, может at certain times hold him, but they cannot hurt him as we может be hurt by him. We Dolgen therefore guard ourselves from his touch. Keep this near tvoi heart." As he spoke, he lifted a malinki silver crucifix and held it ease to me, I being nearest to him. "Put these flowers round tvoi neck." Here he handed to me a wreath of withered garlic blossoms. For other enemies bolia mundane this revolver and this knife, and for aid in all, these so small electric lamps, which you может fasten to tvoi breast, and for all, and above all at the last, this, which we Dolgen not desecrate needless. This was a portion of sacred wafer, which he put in an envelope and handed to me. Each of the others was similarly equipped. "Now," he said, "Friend John, где are the skeleton keys? If so that we может open the dved, we need not break house by the window, as do at Miss Lucy's." Dr. Seward tried 1 or 2 skeleton keys, his mechanical dexterity as a surgeon standing him in хороший stead. Presently he got one to suit. После a malinki play nazad, and forward the bolt yielded and, with a rusty clang, shot nazad. We pressed on the dved, the rusty hinges creaked, and it slowly opened. It was startlingly like the image conveyed to me in Dr. Seward's diary of the opening of Miss Westenra's tomb. I fancy that the same idea seemed to strike the others, for with one accord they shrank nazad. The professor was the first to move forward, and stepped of the open dved. "In manis tuas domin," he said, crossing himself as he passed over the threshold. We closed the dved behind us, lest when we Dolgen have lit nash lamps, we Dolgen possibly attract attention from the road. The professor carefully tried the lock, lest we might not be able to open it from within. Dolgen we be in a hurry, making nash exit. Then we all lit nash lamps and proceeded on nash search. The light from the tiny lamps fell in all sorts of odd forms as the rays crossed each other, or the opacity of nash bodies threw veliki shadows. I could not for my life get away from the feeling that there was someone else amongst us. I suppose it was the recollection, so powerfully brought home to me by the grim surroundings, of that terrible experience in Transylvania. I doom it the feeling was common to us all, for I noticed that the others kept looking over each shoulders at every sound and every new shadow, just as I felt myself doing. The whole place was thick with dust. The floor was seemingly inches deep, except there were recent footsteps, in which on holding vniz my lamp I could visit marks of hobnails the dust was cracked. The walls were fluffy and heavy with dust, and in the corners were masses of spiders' webs, whereon the dust had gathered till they looked like starry, tattered rags as the weight had torn them partly vniz. On a table in the hall was a veliki bunch of keys, with a time-yellowed label on each. They had been used several times, for on the table were several similar rents in the blanket of dust, similar to that exposed when the professor lifted them. He turned to me and said, "Use not this place, Jonathan. You have copied maps of it, and use not it at least bolder than we do. Which is the sposob to the chapel?" I had an idea of its direction, though on my former visit I had not been able to get admission to it. So I led the sposob, and postly a few wrong turnings found myself opposite a low, arched oaken dved, ribbed with iron bands. "This is the spot," said the professor, as he turned his lamp on a small map of the house, copied from the file of my original correspondence regarding the purchase. With a malinki trouble we found the key on the bunch and opened the dved. We were prepared for some unpleasantness, for as we were opening the dved a faint, malodorous air seemed to exhale through the gaps, but none of us ever expected such an odor as we encountered. None of the others had met the Count at all at close quarters, and when I had seen him he was either in the fasting stage of his existence in his rooms, or, when he was gloated with fresh blood, in a ruined building open to the air. But zdis the place was small and close, and the long disuse had still the air stagnant and foul. There was an earthy smell, as of some dry miasma, which came through the fouler air. But as to the odor itself, how shall I describe it? It was not alone that it was composed of all the ills of mortality and with the pungent, acrid smell of blood, but it seemed as though corruption had become itself corrupt. Foh! It sickens me to doom it of it. Every breath exhaled by that monster seemed to have clung to the place and intensified its loathsomeness. In the next paragraph, we are introducing a new word. The word no translates to nit. Under ordinary circumstances, such a stench would have brought Nosh enterprise to an end, but this was nit ordinary case, and the high and terrible purpose in which we were involved gave us a strength which rose above merely physical considerations. Postly the involuntary shrinking consequent on the first nauseous whiff, we one and all set o' Nosh work as though that loathsome place were a garden of roses. We still an accurate examination of the place, the professor saying as we began, "This is a reminder. Remember must translates to dolgen. This is a reminder. Remember what translates to shto. This is a reminder. Remember, no translates to nit. The first thing is to vidit kak many of the boxes are left. We dolgen then examine every hole and corner and cranny, and vidit if we cannot get some clue as to shto has become of the rest." A glance was sufficient to show kak many remained, for the veliki earth chests were bulky, and there was nit mistaking them. This is a reminder. Remember no translates to nit. There were tolka 29 left ease of the 50. Adinraz I got a fright, for, seeing Lord Godalming suddenly turn and smatret ease of the vaulted dved of the dark passage beyond, I looked too, and for an instant my heart stood still. Somewhere, looking east from the shadow, I seemed to vidit the high lights of the Count's evil litso, the ridge of the nose, the red glaza, the red lips, the awful pallor. It was tolka for a moment, for, as Lord Godalming said, I thought I videl a litso, but it was tolka the shadows, and resumed his inquiry. I turned my lamp in the direction, and stepped the passage. There was niet sign of Luboy one, and as there were niet corners, niet doors, niet aperture of luboy kind, but только the solid walls of the passage, there could be niet hiding place even for him. I взял it that fear had helped imagination, and said nothing. A few minutes later I videl Morris step suddenly nazad from a corner, which he was examining. We all followed his movements with nash glaza, for undoubtedly some nervousness was growing on us, and we videl a whole mass of phosphorescence, which twinkled like stars. We all instinctively drew nazad. The whole place was becoming alive with rats. For a moment or two we stood appalled, all save Lord Godalming, who was seemingly prepared for such an emergency. Rushing over to the Veliki iron-bound oaken dvir, which Dr. Seward had described from the outside, and which I had seen myself, he turned the key in the lock, drew the huge bolts, and swung the dvir open. Then, taking his malinki silver whistle from his pocket, he blew a low, shrill call. It was answered from behind Dr. Seward's house by the yelping of dogs, and posle a minute 3 terriers came dashing round the corner of the house. Unconsciously we had all moved to the dvir, and as we moved I noticed that the dust had been much disturbed. The boxes which had been taken, had been brought this sposob. But even in the minute that had elapsed, the number of the rats had vastly increased. They seemed to swarm over the place all at a dinras, till the lamplight, shining on moving dark bodies and glittering, baleful glaza, zdel the place smatrait like a bank of earth set with fireflies. The dogs dashed on, but at the threshold suddenly stopped and snarled, and then, simultaneously lifting noses, began to howl in most lugubrious fashion. The rats were multiplying in thousands, and we moved ease. Lord Godalming lifted one of the dogs, and carrying him in, placed him on the floor. The instant his feet touched the ground, he seemed to recover his courage, and rushed at his natural enemies. They fled do him so fast that though he had shaken the life ease of a score, the other dogs, kto had by сейчас been lifted in the same manner, had but small prey ere the whole mass had vanished. With ich going, it seemed as if some evil presence had departed, for the dogs frisked and barked merrily as they dealt sudden darts at ich prostrate foes, and turned them over and tossed them in the air with vicious shakes. We all seemed to find nash spirits rise, whether it was the purifying of the deadly atmosphere by the opening of the chapel dvir, or the relief which we experienced by finding ourselves in the open night not. But most certainly the shadow of dread seemed to slip from us like a robe, and the occasion of nash coming lost something of its grim significance, though we did not slacken a whit in nash resolution. We closed the outer dvir, and barred and locked it, and bringing the dogs with us, began nash search of the house. We found nothing throughout except dust in extraordinary proportions, and all untouched save for my own footsteps when I had zdjelo my first visit. Never один раз did the dogs exhibit luboy symptom of uneasiness, and even when we returned to the chapel, they frisked as though they had been rabbit hunting in a summer wood. The morning was quickening in the east when we emerged from the front. Dr. Van Helsing had taken the key of the hall door from the bunch and locked the dvir in orthodox fashion, putting the key his pocket when he had done. This is a reminder. Remember, no translates to nit. This is a reminder. Remember, must translates to dolgen. So far, he said, our noche has been eminently successful. Niet harm has prichadit to us such as I feared might be, and yet we have ascertained kak many boxes are missing. Bolea than all do I rejoice that this nash first, and perhaps nash most difficult and dangerous, step has been accomplished, without the bringing therein to nash most sweet Madam Mina, or troubling her waking or sleeping thoughts with sights and sounds and smells of horror which she might never forget. One lesson, too, we have learned, if it be allowable to argue a particulari, that the brute beasts which are to the Count's command are yet themselves not amenable to his spiritual power. For smatret, these rats that would prichadit to his call, just as from his castle top he summoned the wolves to tvoi going, and to that biedny mother's cry, though they prichadit to him, they run pell-mell from the so malinki dogs of my drug Arthur. We have other matters, doas, other dangers, other fears, and that monster, he has not used his power over the brute world for the tolka or the last vreme tonight. So be it that he has gone elsewhere. Haroshi, it has given us opportunity to cry check in some ways in this chess game, which we play for the stake of human souls. And сейчас let us eat thee home. The dawn is close at hand, and we have reason to be content with nash first night's work. It may be ordained that we have many nights and days to follow, if full of peril, but we dolgen it thee on, and from net danger shall we shrink. The house was silent when we got nazad, save for some bedny creature kto was screaming away in one of the distant wards, and a low, moaning sound from Renfield's komnata. The bedny wretch was doubtless torturing himself, mostly the manner of the insane, with needless thoughts of pain. This is a reminder. Remember, must translates to dolgen. I came tiptoe of nash own komnata and found Mina asleep, breathing so softly that I had to put my ear vnice to hear it. She looks paler than usual. I hope the meeting tonight has not upset her. I am truly thankful that she is to be left us of nash future work, and even of nash deliberations. It is too veliki a strain for a woman to bear. I did not doom it so at first, but I znat better сейчас. Therefore I am glad that it is settled. There may be things which would frighten her to hear, and yet to kadin resolve them from her might be worse than to tell her if once she suspected that there was luboy concealment. Henceforth nash work is to be a sealed book to her, till at least such vreme as we mojet tell her that all is finished, and the earth free from a monster of the nether world. I dare say it will be difficult to begin to keep silence mostly such confidence as ours. But I dolgen be resolute, and tomorrow I shall keep dark over tonight's doings, and shall refuse to speak of anything that has happened. I rest on the sofa so as not to disturb her. This is a reminder. Remember, no translates to niet. This is a reminder. Remember must translates to dolgen. This is a reminder. Remember up translates to virch. Burn October later. I suppose it was natural that we dolgen have all overslept ourselves, for the day was a busy one, and the noche had niet rest at all. Even Mina dolgen have felt its exhaustion, for though I slept till the sun was high, I was awake do her and had to call 2 or 3 times do she awoke. Indeed, she was so sound asleep that for a few seconds she did not recognize me, but looked at me with a sort of blank terror, as one looks kto has been waked ease of a bad dream. She complained a malinki of being tired, and I let her rest till later in the day. We сейчас night of 21 boxes having been removed, and if it be that several were taken in luboy of these removals, we may be able to trace them all. Such will, of knushs, immensely simplify our labor, and the sooner the matter is attended to, the better. I shall смотреть вверх Thomas Snelling today. Dr. Seward's Diary, 3rd October. It was towards noon when I was awakened by the professor walking my komnata. He was bolea jolly and cheerful than usual, and it is quite evident that last night's work has helped to take some of the brooding weight off his mind. Postly going over the adventure of the noche, he suddenly said, "Your patient interests me much. May it be that with you I visit him this morning, or if that you are too occupied, I mojditi alone if it may be. It is a new experience to me to find a lunatic to talk philosophy and reason so sound. I had some work to do which pressed, so I told him that if he would iti alone I would be glad, as then I dolgen not have to keep him waiting. So I called an attendant and gave him the necessary instructions. Though the professor left the komnat, I cautioned him against getting luboy false impression from my patient. But, he answered, I want him to talk of himself and of his delusion as to consuming live things. He said to Madame Mina, as I vidit in tvoj diary of yesterday, that he had, Adin Ras had such a belief. Why do you smile, Drug John? Excuse me, I said, but the answer is here. I laid my hand on the typewritten matter. When nash sane and learned lunatics del that ochin statement of kak he used to consume life, his mouth was actually nauseous with the flies and spiders which he had eaten just though Mrs. Harker entered the room. Van Helsing smiled in turn. Good, he said. Your memory is true, Drug John. I dolgen have remembered, and yet it is this ochin obliquity of thought and memory which makes mental disease such a fascinating study. Perhaps I may gain bolia knowledge ease of the folly of this madman than I shall from the teaching of the most wise. Kto knows? I shol on with my work, and daw long was through that in hand. It seemed that the vreme had been ochin short indeed, but there was Van Helsing nazad in the study. Do I interrupt? He asked politely as he stood at the dvier. Not at all, I answered. Come in, my work is finished and I am free. I можете tea with you сейчас, if you like. It is needless. I have seen him. Well? This is a reminder. Remember, no translates to nit. I fear that he does not appraise me at much. Nash interview was short. When I entered his komnata, he was sitting on a stool in the center, with his elbows on his knees, and his litso was the picture of sullen discontent. I spoke to him as cheerfully as I could, and with such a measure of respect as I could assume. He still net reply whatever. Don't you znать me? I asked. His answer was not reassuring. I znать you well enough. You are the starry fool Van Helsing. I wish you would take yourself and tvoy idiotic brain theories somewhere else.